Live.
Hey,
Hi, Natalie.
hey, Monifa, how are you doing?
I'm good, and yourself?
I'm good, as good as I can be during this pandemic.
Yeah, which we are all going through. Um, well, welcome to everyone who's watching. My name is Monifa Ellis Addy, and this is my colleague. Go ahead and say.
Hi, I'm Natalie Nazarian, a licensed marriage and family therapist.
And we would like to welcome you to Hope for the Holidays. We both work under Banyan Therapy Group. I'm a marriage and family therapist associate, as well as a candidate for a certified clinical
Partner specialist.
partner specialist.
Yeah,
Remember what all those acronyms and letters mean.
I know.
Um, so um, we like to welcome you. We're going to be discussing partner betrayal trauma and how it can be so difficult dealing with this during the holidays, hence the name Hope for the Holidays. If you're someone going through this, then you know the holidays can be a very triggering time. Um, During this time, there's past memories, past holiday cheer that once was happy and is just not so joyful anymore. So we're going to be talking about ways to get through the holidays and to restore some joy back into your life.
Yeah.
Um, I guess I'll kick it off by just telling the world a little bit about myself. As I mentioned before, my name is Monifa Ellis Addy. Me and Natalie both work with Dan Drake at the Banyan Therapy Group. And I first got into this work because being an acting out partner as well as a partner myself, I've been on both ends of the spectrum. Um, there's a lot of hurt and pain that goes with that. And the experience of just, coming back to myself and feeling like myself once I got out of the fog kind of led me to this work. I love to share that with others. I believe Natalie shares that same passion with 16 when we work together.
Yeah, definitely. What got me into this work was I was also once betrayed. And so that really opened up my world into what betrayal trauma even is. I had no idea. And honestly, it was really helpful learning about it and very validating to know that it's not just me in my head. I'm not overreacting. This is all normal, and it's something that people go through, not just me. So I think that's something common that Monifa and I share, is that's what brought us into this world and into this work, and that's why we're so passionate about it.
And as we go through this, please, we have the live chat open, so ask us questions. And we also want you to know that this video will be up afterwards, as well as our YouTube channel, Banyan Therapy Group. It'll be up there. And as we mentioned, why we're doing this, we also have a book, if you're interested, Surviving the Holidays by Dan Drake and colleagues.
Yeah, that's a very helpful book.
Extremely helpful. A lot of what we're talking about will be in that book if you want these things handy. And you can always, contact us at the office otherwise, if that's helpful, info@banyantherapy.com. But we'll go more into all that stuff later.
Yeah. And as Monifa mentioned, if you have any questions that come up, feel free to just type them in. If we miss a question, type it again. We'll try to get to everything. Hopefully there are a lot of questions, but who knows?
We'll see.
So yeah, why
I
are
guess
we talking about the holidays?
So the holidays, as we started to get into a little bit before, betrayal trauma is just such a stressful experience. Many times you have all these joyful past memories spending with your partner and your family, and then you find out that betrayal might have been happening during that time. So now when you look back at these pictures and these memories, now it's not as joyful as it once was before. Now you're like starting a grieving process, and you have to be like, I don't know about you, but like I have to be on during the holidays. Like you got to be happy for everyone, especially if you're a mom. You got to be happy for the kids. You can't show your true emotions. Like you have to be on and happy at all times. Baking, getting gifts, like it's a lot that goes on during the
holiday
holidays.
cheer. Yeah.
Yeah. And how do you find that holiday cheer when you're grieving and you don't feel like yourself? Like you're just trying to get your bearings and your foundation. So that is why we chose this time, the holidays, because I feel like this is the most triggering time, is during the holidays for those going through betrayal trauma.
Yeah, and I agree. And going through this, it's not always that you tell everyone what you and your partner are going through. So there's, there could be family members who don't know, or nobody knows, and so you have to show up and try to be your authentic self. And when it's hard, that's hard to do when you have this secret, this weighing secret. And if family members do know, then there's that shame that might come with it of what are people thinking? What are they going to like? How are they acting? How are we acting? So there's a lot that goes into spending time with family during the holidays and having this be a part of it. So it's, learning, and something we'll cover along today is learning how to set these boundaries, having this open communication with your husband or partner or wife. Yeah, that's something I wanted to mention too, is, a partner could be a man or a woman, but it's, statistically it's usually the man. So I'm just used to saying he as the addict. So excuse me, I don't mean to generalize.
Yeah.
But you might hear that slip out here and there, but I do not mean to generalize at all.
Yeah, that goes for me too. It's not just you. If we do that, we apologize ahead of time. It's not, it can really go either way. And adding to what you were on saying, Natalie, yes, you're going through all this. Now it's also quarantine time. There's a pandemic outside.
Yeah.
So not only do you have all that stress and everything Natalie just mentioned, now you have to be with each other. So we'll go into how to navigate that and all those stresses also.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. We'll get into it.
We'll go into it. So first, Natalie, what is betrayal trauma?
Yeah. Well, I was going to go into how it impacts the brain if you want to start talking about some of the symptoms and comparing it to PTSD.
For sure. Yeah, I think that would be good because like you mentioned before, many times, they might think they're crazy. They don't know what's going on. They start questioning themselves. So it's good to notice like how this actually impacts the brain. So you know that like something is actually happening to you, like physically. So it's not something that you're just making up.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I'll jump right into it then, the impact on the brain. So I'm kind of going to read the parts of the brain because I'm not a neurologist, but the areas of the brain that are impacted with the trauma, just like very similar to PTSD, it's the limbic system, and that deals with emotions and memory. It's the anterior cingulate gyrus. I don't know if I'm saying that right, but that it deals with your impulse, your control, and your decision making. And then it also impacts the basal ganglia, which is your motor control. So you can see how, if you put these things in perspective, you can see how the betrayed partner might react and might behave during this time. As a result, people who are traumatized, they are hyper alert. Their brain is just waiting for the next threat. If you think about, the decision making, your motor control, impulse control, you might start acting like ways that you never thought you would ever act before. You get, you start feeling like you're crazy. You don't even recognize yourself. And you become that. I've heard people say, like, I feel paranoid. I feel like a psycho, which it's such a natural thing, because your brain is actually impacted by it. It's not, be kind to yourself. Yeah. Were you going to say something?
No, I was just gonna say that like all that is just so important.
Yeah. Yeah. And, if you think about it, the limbic system is impacted, so you have your emotions all over the place. You're trying to go back and recall all these times you've had with your partner and see, was that real, was that not real?
Mhm.
And I've heard, a lot of women say it just feels like you're living in two parallel worlds. Like you're discovering the past and you're trying to go back and relive a lot of that and figure out the timeline, figure out when was he deceitful, when was he telling the truth, or she, excuse me again, while your life still continues. You still have responsibilities. If you have children, you still have to care for your children. Life still goes on. But for that partner, it's like I said, it's like living in these two parallels, and it's so difficult. It's so difficult to try to get through that on your own.
Yeah, and on top of that, you also have because then it's like, how does this show? Natalie mentioned some of it. You might be questioning yourself, decision making is off, but a lot of times the symptoms show up as like a post-traumatic stress syndrome because it's trauma that you're going through. So you have re-experiencing that's like, which we can also call triggers. You see something, you start having a visceral reaction, you don't know why. You start having avoidance of things where you're having distressing thoughts. You're trying to just stay away from those things that are the triggers. Having negative thoughts and mood. It's so all this will tie into the holidays, but you can see how this is all pretty much opposite of everything that you're supposed to be feeling during the holidays. So going through this, you can see already that there's a bit of a problem, of a conundrum that you can find yourself in. You're also always on edge. You might have problems with sleep, maybe self-destructive behaviors, aggression, etc. So you have all this going on, and then it comes up emotionally as well in somatic ways, like in the body. Emotionally, you can feel through intrusive memories, which Natalie just touched on.
Yeah.
Having a difficult time just functioning throughout your day, hypervigilance, self-loathing, depression, et cetera, et cetera. And then physically, now you can have tension in your neck. Stress, as we all know, affects the body in so many ways. So can have a racing heart. There can lead to intestines. Actually, that's one thing that I think always gets skipped by. You don't realize how this can actually like affect your intestines. So, constipation, diarrhea, like all that stuff plays into each other. And then when you don't pay attention to these things for a long period of time, it can turn into medical issues.
Yeah.
So you have these physical things that you might think like, okay, my stomach is just queasy today, when actually, no, that's a part of the stress reaction that's going on. And then if you ignore it long enough, now you can have things like pelvic issues, fibromyalgia, digestive disorders, heart disease, diabetes, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Like stress has a weird way of putting itself in the body.
Yeah. And along with, those symptoms that you talked about, emotional and physical, another response to trauma is disassociation. So, that's just a protective mechanism that your brain just uses to remove yourself from the perceived threat. So, you'll start feeling disconnected from your thoughts, from your feelings, from your surroundings. It impacts the sense of time. So you might not even know. And this usually happens during the beginning of discovery, but it can go on if it's not treated. But not knowing what time it is, and that could be so difficult if you still work, if you still have kids to watch, if you still have responsibilities like many of us do. And oftentimes this could lead the partner to turn to substance use, maybe like turn to food, social media, gambling, anything to distract yourself from these feelings. So it's important to know that this could happen and to start, noticing, be cognizant of of what you're doing. Are you starting to overeat? Are you starting to undereat? Are you drinking more? Start paying attention to what's really going on. And like I said, you start to depersonalize. It might seem like this out of body experience, like you're not, like you're in some sort of fog, some sort of dream type world or nightmare type world. So yeah, it's very important to know that this could happen and to really watch out for it.
Yeah. Especially because if you're in such a state where you're questioning yourself, it's easy to bypass these things.
Yeah.
Not realizing that you're coping or your body is shutting down. And then tying it into the holidays, as I mentioned, avoidance being one of the symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder that can happen while you're experiencing the trauma. You have all these external reminders and feelings and thoughts, and you're trying to work through all these memories. And it's even intensified during the holidays. And it's even intensified now during quarantine and a pandemic. So we feel that it's very important to find new ways to celebrate the holidays, and as well as manage yourself and have self-care. So let me ask you, Natalie, like, why do you think it's important to start this new tradition and new life when you're entering the holidays?
Yeah. I think you mentioned a little earlier, when you discover that the betrayal or addiction, when you first discover it, you kind of backtrack and try to figure out like timelines, and holidays is a big thing, because holidays is usually a time where you spend together with family, and so we tend to start thinking about, especially when the holidays start coming up, is, wait a second, what was going on last year or the year before, whenever. But what was going on during the holidays then? Was he or she doing, being unfaithful? Was this still going on? And I was so happy then. How could I have been like so blind? How could I have been, A, B, and C? And so it becomes tainted. The holidays, unfortunately, do become tainted. So it is important to, in recovery, start working to make new traditions that you guys can, move forward from, and not really have to think about the past and how if you've had traditions in the past that could trigger a trauma response, that could trigger you to remember what has happened. So that's why it's important to start trying to make some new traditions and new memories.
Yeah. And I also think it's important to add that, you have to be kind to yourself. You're grieving the past. Like, this is a grieving process. And that needs to be honored, just like any other grieving process would need to be honored to get through it. You're grieving the past holiday cheer. You're grieving this past life that you had with your partner. You're grieving, being happy in the moment and just truly enjoying yourself. Like, you're grieving, and it's important to just accept that and be kind to yourself through that and pay attention to that. You don't want to be in situations that cause you discomfort, which, I know can be a little bit difficult during the pandemic because everyone's kind of on top of each other. But, you're things like Zoom, like, don't do a Zoom if you don't feel like it. Don't feel pressure, because they're having a family Zoom and everyone's going to be on there, that you have to be a part of it. If you need to take time for yourself, then take that time for yourself. Don't allow things like unsafe company, especially during the pandemic. I know some people want to have familial gatherings, but if you don't feel safe with that company, then don't allow it. Do things that you are only comfortable with, and nothing more than that. Also, spreading yourself thin. Like, how many of us, especially moms, spreads yourself thin during the holidays? You're baking cookies, you're buying gifts, you're entertaining the kids, the list goes on and on. You're creating games, you're decorating the tree. Like, it's so many things that happen during the holidays, and it's only like what, in a 4-week span, like you're compiling everything. And it's I mean, honestly, I'm thinking about it, I'm like, even when you're in a healthy brain, it's a lot.
It's a lot. Yeah. Yeah.
So imagine when you're coming from a trauma injured brain, having to do all these things also. Like, it's impossible. You know, be nice to yourself. If you can't handle it and it doesn't feel right to you in that moment, then just don't do it. Only do what you're capable of doing. If all you can do is entertain the kids, then just entertain the kids. You know, it's important not to spread yourself so thin.
Yeah. I mean, you know, that kind of brings us into boundaries and how important boundaries are, especially during the holidays. And it's a good idea to come together with your partner to set and agree on boundaries. You know, if I don't know if you guys are seeing family, what part of the world you're like what part of the world you're at now and how the lockdown is, but if you are seeing family, you know, agree on how long we're gonna stay. Are we going to have like a cue to know we need to leave? What topics we're not going to discuss if the family knows, or, you know, just you need to set these boundaries with your partner to know that you're entering a safe space and anything could be triggering. And so having these boundaries is very important during the holidays when you spend it with family.
And then having those boundaries, also just have boundaries around yourself and self-care. Like, you need time to process this grief. So if anytime you can find some alone time, do whatever makes you feel good. If it's a bubble bath, locking yourself in a closet and reading a book, you know, for people that are like in 1-bedroom apartments and don't necessarily have any space, you know, lock yourself in the bathroom, whatever needs to happen, taking a walk. You have to place boundaries around yourself for your own just mental health and getting through this process and allowing yourself to process.
Yeah, definitely. A lot of people, you know, think self-care equals selfish, and that's not true. Self-care is so important during this time. And so it's establishing what is good for you and what you can do for yourself to get through as much as you can. Self-care I'm a huge advocate for that.
Yeah, I probably need to practice it more, but definitely a huge advocate for that. But then that brings up a question.
I was gonna say before you move on, we have a little Candace Stone. I just want to read. She said, "Super informative. You hit the nail about the grieving description. It's so true." Yes.
Yeah, we tend not to think about grieving. Like, we tend to think of grieving only when it comes to death, like physical death. We don't realize that you can grieve so many other parts of your life. You can grieve a relationship. You can grieve the past. Yeah, you can grieve anything. It's because grieving, what it really means is just a loss, and loss can come in so many different shapes and forms.
Right.
And thank you, Candace. We have Dan Drake. Dan's
hey,
watching.
Dan.
Hi, Dan. Completely agree. Healing, recovery is about grieving, and that's even more heightened during the holiday season. Yes. So that's also a great segue into. So we talk about, like, you know, you're grieving, self-care, but it's like, how do you handle self-care when you have all of those other symptoms going on, like the triggers happening, you know, you're re-experiencing things, you're on edge. So, because it's nice, we can be like, oh yeah, do self-care, but it's like, okay, but what about those symptoms?
Yeah, that's a good point, Monifa. That's a really good point. And I guess that would lead us to talking about how important it is. I think it's, you know, it's really vital. It's vital to the foundation of healing. You're really reestablishing safety and finding support. I think a lot of people might skip this step or not really think about it, but it's so important to healing. Because, you know, keeping secrets to protect the relationship leads to isolation. And so partners a lot of times are very isolated, and emotions heal when they're heard and validated. And if you're isolating, you're not talking about it, you're keeping it to yourself, it's going to really prolong the healing process.
Yeah, no, for sure. And it's easy to isolate because especially that this is such a unique position to be in. There's friends and family members that might not understand.
Yeah.
They just might think it's a simple, easy fix. It's difficult to reach out to others, especially when you're talking about, such something like triggers. People might think, well, oh, you're just, being nutty. Like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, no, something is actually happening. I can feel it. So I think it's important for us to talk about, actually, that would be a good thing for us to talk about, like how should we deal with triggers when they arise? Because you can't control that they're going to happen. Triggers are going to happen. Like, it'd be nice if we put you in a bubble and somewhere and be like, there will be no more triggers. But unfortunately, they will happen in life. So what we're going to discuss now is how to work through the trigger. Because yes, you can't control that it's going to happen, but you have a say in how you get out of it.
Yeah. Well, I think the most important thing is identifying what your triggers are. A lot of times we don't know. We just, something sets us off when we're angry, and we don't really think about what it was that set us off, why we're angry, why we're feeling this way. We're just angry or upset. And so really identifying what it was that set you off. And I mean, it's normal to have triggers. So, like we mentioned before, normalize it. It's okay. Especially during the holidays. But yeah, and then, techniques you can figure out. I think Dan has I think in the Surviving the Holidays, he talks about de-escalating techniques, but also with your therapist or any type of support you might have, to practice breathing, spot checking, grounding techniques, bring yourself to the here and now. Yeah. Anything else you want to add about triggers?
Well, just to give a little, I guess my favorite one to use is the 5 senses one. You know that one, Natalie? So it's 5 things that you can, I always get them mixed up. So 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can taste. So and someone else asked me before, just in case someone might ask us, like, why in that order? I think it just has to do with what's accessible to you. Like, you can't really go around tasting 5 things. Like, that would be the first thing to do. So if it's 5 things you can see, like, that's easier to access. And you might not even get down to taste. Like, you might be able to orient yourself and get present by the time you get to smell. But I like that because it addresses your 5 senses. So you have no option but to orient yourself into the here and now of what's happening. So it helps to de-escalate you and get you nice and present, where you can assess, okay, what just happened? What's triggering me? How do I pull myself out of this? Like, how do I shift gears and move into something else?
Yeah, definitely staying grounded and using that grounding technique is really important, because when we do get triggered, our minds just go off and we may start remembering things. We may start making up stories that might have happened, could have happened, and we just go on and off into this world. And so that's why that grounding technique is really important, to ground yourself and bring yourself back to the here and now. What's happening here? What am I feeling now? And how can we kind of move forward from this moment? And triggers are so tricky, because it could be anything.
Anything.
It doesn't have to be related to sex at all. It doesn't have to be related to relationships at all. It could be this cup of coffee, or like, I don't know, just it could be anything. And so, and knowing that too, it's like, it does not have to be related.
Yeah, which is very important, because I think people tend to think it it always has to do with sex, and that's not necessarily the case. But we do
Right.
have a question. So how do we get the addict to understand and appreciate partner triggers? They seem to get defensive so easily. This is very true. What we always say, a way to get them on the page, and once, we do hope you're in therapy or some type of support where you can, couples therapy is also a good avenue to go into, where you have someone to help translate what it is that you're going through. And that they're in their own recovery, so that they're in a place where they are, trying to help you through this. But, it's just having them to understand that this is a part of your experience due to what was caused, due to what they did, due to the betrayal that you experienced. Now you're kind of just hyperactive to when these things happen. Yes, they might get defensive because they're the ones that caused it, and that's a hard pill to swallow. But, this is a part of the reality now. This happened, so now you're having a reaction, like an actual physical reaction. You can even tell them about how it affects the brain, like that these are actually physical things that have happened to you. Like, it's not something that you're just making up. Like, no one wants to be triggered. You can't necessarily control this.
Yeah, I think psychoeducation around it is very important for the addict to understand, and hopefully he is in treatment and can process the feeling defensive, feeling maybe shame or guilt that might come up with the partner getting triggered based on something that they might have done or did. So hopefully the addict is in therapy. But also for the partner to, try to use communication skills as best as you can, healthy communication skills of, I statements, own up to the feeling of I'm feeling this way, I'm feeling triggered, or these things are coming up for me. And I think communication is so important during times like this. And sometimes you just don't want to communicate in a healthy way. And I totally get that. And I've been there. And you just want to yell and scream and be angry. But that happens, and that's part of the trauma. So, like Monifa said, psychoeducation around what you're going through, so the addict can understand, and try to communicate effectively, use your I statements.
And I like what you said about how you want to scream and be angry. Do give your time to scream and be angry. That is a part of your self-care. If you need to go scream outside, go in the closet, wherever you can get some alone time, like that's a part of your grieving process. So by communicating this, we don't want to sound out the message that, by being nice to your addict, you're just kind of discounting what you're going through, because that's not
Right.
what this is. You still do have space to scream and be angry. We just want you to be able to, get through these holidays with the least strife as possible. So, and that's what Natalie is getting to, like, that's where communication comes in, as healthy as you possibly have the bandwidth to do at the moment.
Yeah.
Sorry, but thank you for the question. Keep them coming. Please give us more questions. We like them. So support systems, because we were talking about boundaries and, focusing on yourself so you can have some healing. But then that also goes into, having a proper support system. This can be difficult. As we mentioned before, many times family and friends don't quite understand. But, there are local support groups, which we'll go into later when we give you some resources, therapeutic support groups, therapy, any way you can get it, any type of support so that you can have. Affirmations. Go ahead. Sorry, Natalie.
It's okay. I was just gonna say, a lot of times your partner was your main support system, if not your only support system. So it's it's kind of like your world gets shattered by the person you trusted the most. And so you will start, you know, you might start to doubt your own judgment, your ability to keep yourself safe even, you know, well, how do I know if I can trust this friend anymore? If I, you know, trusted my partner and this happened, how can I even trust myself to know who I can trust and who I can get support from? And it's so, you know, it's so important to at least start with that, you know, that knowledge. And sorry, I lost my train of thought, but yeah, so as a spouse, you start to question the validity of the love between you and your partner. And you start to, you know, like I've mentioned before, happy memories become tainted. You start recounting memories, questioning everything. So it's a very unsafe place that you feel like you're at. Not going to sugarcoat that at all. You feel unsafe, you feel unsupported, and a lot of times you just don't even want to reach out. But like I mentioned before, it is so vital to your recovery and to your healing to get support. So like Munifa mentioned, if it's with a therapist, if it's with a group, you know, being in a group with other women who've been through this is honestly so helpful. And, you know, you don't have to go out and start trying to get support from everybody and anybody you know, because, you know, you have to be careful of who you can tell, who you feel comfortable with telling. And, you know, that's something that I feel like you and your partner should agree on too, down the line eventually. But yeah, I'm a firm believer in at least starting with a therapist or a group, somewhere really safe that you feel like you could start building up that trust within yourself again.
And if you don't have access to therapy or a group, usually, you know, we all have that one person that they might not agree with what you're saying, but they're at least supportive, you know, so, you know, you can hang on them, like just somebody, something. There has to be some type of support is vital. I just want to read one of the comments we just got. Yeah, triggers are finicky, especially if they're activated around certain family members. Yes, it's harder around the holidays because we tend to push ourselves beyond our comfort zone boundaries so as not to disrupt the family flow. Yes, holidays during COVID has made it both easier to distance, but that may or may not help once a reunion occurs.
Yeah.
That's an excellent point, Candace. Thank you for that. Because yeah, usually those triggers, you know, you're around family members, you're in places you don't necessarily want to be. So COVID gives you the advantage of now you can distance yourself.
You have a good excuse, yeah.
Yeah, you got a good excuse. No one's going to argue with you if you're like, I don't feel comfortable with that because of COVID. So at the most, it buys you some time. Because like you mentioned, that it may, you know, once the reunion occurs, it might make it a little more difficult once the reunion occurs. But now at least you bought yourself some time so you can plan how you want that reunion to go. You know, what information are you going to share, if any at all? And you can even plan with your partner how you want that, you know, what situations you feel safe in, where you don't feel safe, where you want to be, where you don't want to be, and so on and so on. Oops. And did you see the other comment, Natalie? Can you see them?
Yeah, I see them. Dan Drake said, you mentioned boundaries before. I hear what Candace is saying too. The holidays can be a time where some may push past what they feel comfortable. How can partners best balance needs for the family with own personal needs? Can you speak on what ways can keep the spirit of the season, maybe for the kids, while also setting new boundaries for their own self-care? Yeah, I think we kind of touched on this earlier too, on how, you know, really setting these boundaries when it comes to being with family and during the holidays. Agreeing, you and your partner agreeing on, you know, what time you're going to get there, what time you're going to leave, like all the little details that might come up, what you're comfortable with talking about, what you're not comfortable with talking about. And if if and when a topic of conversation comes up that you're not comfortable with, how are you going to handle that? And it might seem, maybe have something set that you want to say, like a phrase that you're going to use, and you're going to stick to that phrase, just so you can get out of that. And the best way to do that is if you and your partner can be on the same page on this, and really agree on, the boundaries around that.
Yeah. Like you said, like communication is key in this point, because yes, you might want to push past your boundaries, to kind of, because you feel obligated to family members. But if you guys agree on these boundaries, that's where they come into as backup, to help you. And, like Natalie mentioned, having a code word or something where you're both on the same page. And if they are not on the same page with you, then you kind of just got to do it for yourself. If you need to step away, and if you can't handle it in the moment, then do whatever you need to do whatever you have the bandwidth for. Kids, I understand with kids, it can be a little tricky because, you want to be there for your kids. But if that's all you have bandwidth for, then just handle the kids and don't do anything else. I would want people to understand that you don't have to be obligated during the holidays. And I think it's so natural to obligate ourselves to all these tasks, and you don't want to obligate yourself unnecessarily. Only do what it is that you feel that you have the capacity to do.
Yeah, I feel like that's important to do regardless, right? Whether you're going through this or not. And a lot of times we don't set these boundaries, but this could be a good way for you to start setting the appropriate boundaries. Because even whether or not you're going through this, it's important for you and your family to have boundaries. And I know how difficult it could be to set boundaries with your family. And I see Candace here said, yeah, that's what I'm alluding to, feeling isolated if there's a considerable amount of gaslighting from certain family members. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. Even more important to just keep your boundaries strong. Like, unfortunately, when we grow up in life, no one really teaches us about boundaries. We kind of go through life without them, not realizing how important it is. So this is an opportunity, honestly, because if you have gaslighting family members, they probably were already kind of an issue before this even happened. It's like there was something along the lines was already probably happening. So this could be an opportunity to create solid boundaries to protect yourself and protect your mental health, and protect your family, especially if you have children. You want to be the best that you can be for your kids. So the boundaries are even more important. And you're modeling for your children, what it's like to set boundaries and how important it is.
Yeah. A lot of times people think boundaries are selfish, and setting boundaries means that I'm being rude and not disrespectful, and that's against my family values. But it's boundaries aren't something that it's something that you have within yourself. It's not, you don't have to go up to the person and say, we're not talking about this because that's my boundary and that's it. It's not necessarily outright like that. It's more, you within yourself know that, for example, this topic I will not talk about. And so if it's brought up, you can walk away, or you can nicely say, I'm not comfortable talking about that. And, some families do push back. What do you mean? We're going to keep talking. And to get comfortable with your voice, and to get comfortable with repeating yourself and saying, I understand, but I'm just not comfortable talking about that. And then changing the subject if you can, and if it works. But really getting used to repeating yourself, getting used to just having a voice in the family.
Yeah, and following through,
Definitely.
Because like Candace mentioned, the boundaries can get pushed, where now you're doing more than you wanted to do, and now you're talking about that topic you didn't want to talk about. Following through with those boundaries, it's only going to make you stronger in the end. And not only just with your partner, but just with life in general. Because boundaries are just important for life. There should be like a class in school growing up on
Definitely.
boundaries.
Definitely. 'Cause I feel like, we're like raised this culture where we're just raised to please others all the time, and that's how we get so enmeshed in this whole boundary thing. It's so hard to set boundaries because we feel like we need to please and do what others want from us,
Especially as a female.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, it's enhanced 10 times as a female to be kind, nice, ladylike, obedient, etc., etc., etc.
Yeah.
And all this conflicts with taking care of yourself.
Yeah, and if you have kids, it's a good example. It's a good time to model boundaries, like you mentioned, to your kids, because a lot of times we don't, and so our kids learn from that. And again, if boundaries aren't working, you keep getting pushed. That's a good idea. As to why you and your partner should talk about it beforehand. And so if you feel like, it's getting too much, leave, make an agreement, maybe come up with an excuse beforehand. And, we got to go. And that could be you setting your boundary.
Yeah. And do know that this is going to feel awkward. Just because, like we just mentioned, it's not something that's taught in school. Their family, they most likely didn't learn it. There's usually a lack of boundaries in general. So it may feel awkward. It may feel like punishment, like you're putting punishment onto someone, or which is going to be the urge to kind of push against your own boundaries because you're like, oh, I don't want to do that. I'm being mean. Because especially, for women, they're programmed, and some men programmed to be nice to everyone. In the words of Oprah, being kind is overrated. Putting yourself first is much more important. So if you can push through that awkward discomfort of setting the boundary, I promise you'll feel better on the other end of it.
Yeah, and if you try to shift your mindset of what a boundary is, start reframing that and looking at it as, well, I'm doing this for me, not a punishment to them, but something important for me, and try to really reframe your mind into thinking that way. Might be helpful for you.
And Dan says, oh, I like what you're saying. All too often, partners get thrown under the bus by family members or even the addicted spouse. So even though it may be difficult to set these boundaries, they are significant for health. And thank you for Dan for that, because going back to what we're saying with health, if you don't set these boundaries and now you have all these trauma responses and everything going on, you're not tending to your health by not setting boundaries, like your actual physical health. It can lead to so many medical issues. And then you're like, how did I get here? And, everything starts from the brain. So by you not setting these boundaries and you not caring for yourself mentally, it'll start to manifest medically.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you for that, Dan.
So yes, we're talking about all the stuff about setting boundaries and how difficult it is. It's like, okay, so how do you go about doing this? And this is where things can get a little tricky. But lucky for you, we mentioned therapy services that can help to walk you through this if you're having trouble going through this. At the Banyan Therapy Group, this is what we specialize in, is sex addiction and partner betrayal trauma. There's things such as like individual treatment. We have partner betrayal trauma support groups. This coming year, we should have 2 rotating ones, right, Natalie? Natalie's joining me. Yes. Natalie should be joining me this year coming up, because I have a rotating one and Natalie's going to start her own also. We also have partners intensives. If you're beginning your process, an intensive could be very vital and helpful for you just to get like a jump start. It's a 4-day process. It's an outpatient program. We do about like 8 hours of treatment a day from Friday to Monday. So you're getting therapy, you're getting grounding techniques, de-escalation techniques, you're getting exercises, you're bonding with other people on the same doing the same experience as you, and you're learning how to get to the other side. Like, what does this vision for the other side look like? So we compile that on into 4 days. If disclosure is something that you need to gain your safety, we talked about ways to gain safety. If you want a therapeutic disclosure, we can also help facilitate that. We have intensives where we can do a therapeutic disclosure, and we will walk you through it so that way you feel safe as you're going through it, because this is a very, touchy and tumultuous time, and we want to treat that with care. And then we also can do just customized intensives. If there's something specific that you want to work on, you can contact us and we will help, walk you through that and get a plan going for you. Is there anything to add to that, Natalie?
Nothing to add. You said that very nicely. Yeah, nothing to add. Nothing to add there. Just wanted to, validate the need for the feeling of needing services, because I know a lot of times partners, feel like, well, I didn't do it. I'm not the one who betrayed my partner. I'm not the one, who's the addict. Why do I need to get services? And I feel like hopefully, you've learned some stuff here, and hopefully you could understand why a partner may need support and may need services. And a lot of times I agree. It's like, it's not my problem. I'm not the one who did it. It's like, if you think of an example of, I don't know, getting into a car accident and another car hits you, and now you need maybe physical therapy, but you're like, oh, I'm not the one who caused the accident, but you still need, physical therapy to get better.
That's a great analogy. I like that. Because you're right. You hear that statement a lot. I've thought that statement. I'm sure you have too.
Yeah.
It comes up very often. And I like that analogy of a car accident, because that's exactly what it is. Yes, you're not the one that did it, but you still have the effects. You're still affected by it, and you still need treatment coming out of it. Right. So yeah, this is what you're going through is not, I know it might feel isolating. You might feel alone, but you're not, it's, you're not less than if you're coming in for help. That's coming in for help is you empowering yourself to move to the other side of this, that you don't have to stay in a place of being triggered, of being disempowered, of being, of feeling like you just, have no bearing, or feeling like you're in a fog. Like, you can come out of the fog.
And you really can. I do want to give some hope. And I'm sure Monifa can back me up on this too. Both of us having gone through this ourselves. It does sometimes feel like there's no light, but I'm hoping that we can give you some sort of hope that you can get out of it. There is light.
Yeah. And if you want more information on this, once again, there is the book, Surviving the Holidays, and there's also our website, banyantherapy.com. We have a lot of blogs and more information, or if you want to get in touch about services. Also, if you go into apsats.org, that is where we are, where we did our training, the Association of Partners of Sex Addicts and Trauma Specialists. It's a mouthful. Apsats.org has a ton of information on this also, as far as also you can look for specialists there. And then local support groups. The website actually will also put all this stuff in the comments when this is all said and done, because you can look this up on YouTube. under
Yeah.
the Banyan Therapy Group are also on Facebook, where you're probably watching us right now. But there's the COSA Recovery .org. You can go through their website also and find yourself a local support group. I'm assuming right now it's probably all Zoom, so it probably doesn't need to be local. But actually use this to your benefit. Like, use this time. If you're stuck at home, find one of these groups and start working on that support system that me and Natalie talked about.
Yeah. And then, well, you want to say where they can find you individually?
Oh, yeah, me. Yes. You can find me at www.monifaellisaddy.com. It's my own personal website, but you'll see all the services that we have for Banyan and just like a more deeper dive into my style and what it is that I do.
Yeah.
And you have your own, right, Natalie?
Yeah. At Nazaryan Therapy, Nazaryan therapy.com. And just like Monifa said, you can find services that I offer and along with Banyan over there as well.
And if you don't have any more questions, I guess this would be a safe space to, I guess, pull it all together. I think the main thing that we want you to walk away with, which we've been saying this whole time, is that the holidays don't have to be this time of, yes, you'll be grieving, but there is another side to it. You can still enjoying the holidays and have hopeful, happy moments while still going through this grieving process, even though I know it may feel like you can't. Anything to add to that, Natalie?
No, it's just, like you said, hold on to that hope and set those boundaries. You can get through the holidays. Just have to make sure that you're setting the boundaries. Try to be on the same page as your partner, and do what you feel is best for you right now in your recovery. Don't feel like you need to go above and beyond out of your way to please others, especially during a time like this. Yeah.
And I'm typing in the comments right now because, thank you for the AppStats website. It's
Lena.
Yeah. So
Perfect.
I'm typing them. I'm typing
the
website.
She's asking if you can spell it.
Yeah, APSATS.org.
Yeah.
I'm typing them into the comments right now. And Natalie, type yours in, Natalie. I'm going to bother spelling your last name.
I'm trying to figure out if I can.
No, you can't? Okay.
I don't know.
Nazaryan,
Nazaryan therapy.
Therapy. Okay, so in the comments we put my website, Natalie's website, and the AppStats website. Dan, one last.
The Van, I don't know if I'm saying that correctly. Do you think making a safety plan is a good idea? Save for a difficult day at Christmas or New Year's. Oh, I think it's a great idea.
Yes.
Definitely. Thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, a safety plan, definitely going along with your boundaries. And if you feel like boundaries aren't being respected and what you've planned on isn't going the right way, definitely develop some sort of safety plan to get out of there or to help you during a very triggering moment you might have.
For sure. Yeah, like you said, Christmas or New Year's Eve, very triggering. If you can't, you need to abort mission, and get out of there, have your plan or whatever it is that your plan is, have that safety plan ready to go. Yes, thank you for bringing that up because that is an excellent point for sure.
Yeah.
Dan had one last thought. He said, this is such a chaotic time in our world because of COVID, so it may be a good opportunity to create new traditions that work for you this year. Everyone is adjusting, so it's a good time to make this season what you want it to be.
Yeah, just like we
Definitely.
talked about earlier, making those new traditions.
Yeah. Use this COVID to your benefit. Like, yeah, it sucks, but you can, use this time. You have a good excuse. So use this time, and then you can always adjust and figure out later how you want to, um, acclimate that to regular life, whatever that it's going to be.
Right. Yep.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone.
Yeah,
who
thank you
came
so much,
by.
everyone who came by, asked questions, made comments.
Yeah.
Love it.
And this video will still be up on our page, a Banyan Therapy Group, and it'll also be on the YouTube channel, Banyan Therapy Group YouTube channel. We're live there also, so you can definitely go back and watch this at any time, or you can also ask us questions if you didn't want to ask here. It's perfectly fine. You can contact me or Natalie directly, or info@banyantherapy.com, and one of us will get to you there. Okay.
Hope you have safe and happy holidays, and be kind to yourself.
Yes. All right. You have a great day, everyone. Happy holidays.
Bye.